Okay, great. So yeah, we're ready to start this panel. So just wanted to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to, spend it with us, learn a little bit more about solutions engineering and specifically, some of the SEs here at HashiCorp. So yeah, we're going to be, talking to the SEs on the panel, learning a bit about their careers, what's led them to end up here at HashiCorp and, any sort of tidbits, advice that they can share about their journey. Cool. So, just to give a little bit of an introduction about myself, and then I'll share the stage with my great, panel. My name is Carlos Esteban, and I'm a solutions engineer here at HashiCorp. Been here for a year and a half, and I was actually originally an intern the summer of 2021. So it's been really great for me to, start as an intern and then transition up and get that experience working with accounts and with, account managers in the field, all of that. It's been great. And, I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and right now I'm actually in Denver, Colorado, just on a ski trip this past weekend. And, we're all going to share a fun fact about ourselves. And I think one for me would be that I've lived in 5 different countries and also that I'm ambidextrous. Like I eat with my left hand and I write with my left hand, but I'll throw a ball with my right hand and do other things with my right hand. So I think it's pretty interesting. But yeah, now just hand it off to Tony. We'll just go left to right on the presentation slide. So Tony, if you could introduce yourself and give a fun fact as well.
Hey there. Thank you, Carlos. It's great to see everyone in the audience today. I can't see you on video, but I hope you're all excited about what we're going to be sharing. For those who I have not gotten to say hello to just yet, my name is Tony Polkill. I'm based out of the East Coast, New Jersey, New York City area. Been with HashiCorp for just over 5 years, past my 5-year Hashiversary, as we call it, back in February. And I took a little bit of a interesting route through HashiCorp. I didn't start from the SE world. I came in here as an SE, though, and moved into a couple of different roles as the company was growing. Most recently, I ran the Globals organization, and today I run our top financial accounts. But looking forward to sharing a little bit more, as including my fun fact, which is that my wife and I compete on the number of books that we can get signed. We've got a lot of books, as you can imagine, for an academic, for anyone who didn't guess. She is beating me, though, because she got a bunch of them signed by Jane Goodall. I do look forward, though, if anyone has a good book recommendation, or if there's an author signing in your ear, happy to go and try to get back onto the leaderboard. Pass the mic over to Vani.
Hi,
Great,
everyone.
thanks.
My name is Vani Trivengadam. I'm the solutions engineering leader for our enterprise segment at HashiCorp. I'm coming up on my 3 years, and I live in the beautiful Basking Ridge in New Jersey. Fun fact about me, I can speak almost 6 languages, but I haven't learned anything new in a very long time. So I hope to learn Spanish with my son. Thank you. Chintan, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Ani. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chintan Gosal, and I'm a senior solutions engineer at HashiCorp, 4.5 years now, and I'm based out of San Jose, California. I work in the Tony's team, and we work with some of the largest banking and financial services customers to help them accelerate their cloud and digital transformation journey using the Hashi tools. A fun fact about me, I love cooking, and I work as a sous chef at a restaurant while I was pursuing my master's degree. So my dream is, at one day I'll be able to open a restaurant in Napa Valley, especially after I retire.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, so do a little bit of cooking and then pop out, do a little bit of Terraform involved, get them modernized on the cloud. I love it. Great. So yeah, now that you've gotten to meet our panel, we're gonna dive into the panel discussion and just want to remind everybody that there will be a Q&A section at the end. So please submit your questions. And if you're lucky, we'll, ask the panelists, see what they have to say as a response. Great. So we're going to go basically do round robin, ask every panelist if they can take us down that journey of their career. Can you explain to us, where you've started, what those stages have been like, and ultimately how you've ended up here at this current role in HashiCorp? So Tony, if you want to start, and then we'll follow the same trail.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I had a interesting route here. I had a lot of different roles in my career, and a lot of that was based off of very intentional pivots I made. So every 4 or 6 years, really reflecting on what do I want to do next? What rounds myself out as an engineer, as a technologist? So that journey took me from a traditional computer science background. I did a lot of research in everything from sensor fusion to web UX to all sorts of interesting things that are now embedded on smartphone tech, all the way through shifting from development work to sysadmin work. It landed me at Columbia. Before I came to HashiCorp, I was running a team there, actually with a friend of mine who brought me to HashiCorp. So relationships matter. We'll talk about that. But that journey, I think, was very intentionally asking myself, where can I continue to really support the type of work that's exciting to me? Part of what brought me to HashiCorp was reflecting on the products, the technology, the types of use cases that we serve, being something that I was living in my day-to-day at Columbia, but then translating that into solutions that we can offer for customers at truly incredible scales. So I love the products. I think that speaks for themselves, but the people along the way helped push me toward asking, what do you do next to really think about where do you want to end up? So I came to HashiCorp as a solutions engineer. I got to join the great New York Metro team. And back then we were so small that we got to do a little bit of everything. You got to work with some of the most dynamic customers that are just emerging in the startup space, all the way to some of the largest institutions in the world. That continued to grow as the company grew. We created a lot of new functions at the organization over those 5 years. And every time we got to say, how do we do better, faster, more? And so along the way, I progressed through the SE ranks, became a staff SE at the end, and then made the jump into management. So it's been a wonderful, rewarding experience. As Chintan mentioned, he's on my team. I've got an awesome group. And that started originally in the globals team where Chintan, Vani, and I all got to work together. And as our roles evolved, as the company evolved, we most recently transformed that into the first vertical at the company. So a large portion of our customer base in globals was financials, as we reflected on how do we start capitalizing on patterns, force accelerators, for us to think about not just financials and the problem space that exists there, but also where is there overlap between other regulated markets? How do we start to think about refining our solutions for the customers that we get to serve? That continues to be what I look forward to every day. And I think every so often, we still get to do some interesting technical deep dives. So certainly a very compressed amount of time, but I always ask myself that same question. How do we keep trying to do more as leaders, but also as technologists? Because the beauty of our market is there's always something new. So look forward to learning a lot more from our panelists, and I'll pass it over to Bonnie.
Thanks, Tony. And I always learn new things about you. So I've had a 20+ year career, and I see my career in 2 distinct phases. The first phase was I was a software developer, and I joined Infosys, one of the leading global system integrators, and then NTT Data. I worked with a lot of customers building solutions and supporting them for large pharmacies like Walgreens, retailers like PepsiCo, worked with financial institutions like Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and even TIA. During my entire journey, I would often work with solution engineers, right? Working with them in evaluating products, implementation, demos, and I loved the solution engineering job. It was a good culmination of what brought together technical expertise, as well as, working, being customer-centric. So that inspired me to make a transition and become an SE. Of course, I started with becoming the middleware SE at Red Hat. That was very interesting. And I really enjoyed that work. Learned everything about the middleware portfolio, Linux. At Cisco, I was observability solutions engineer, everything about monitoring of our customers' infrastructure. There, I grew to become an SME and also stepped into leadership. It was a very interesting and great time for me. I also saw the lack of customer success or post-sales in our journey, and that's what prompted me to move into customer success. And I joined HashiCorp as a customer success leader. And like Tony said, I've moved through a few roles here at HashiCorp. Just before this, I was managing the New York Metro SE team, and currently I'm managing the enterprise segment, East segment for HashiCorp. So I think the beauty of solutions engineering is it brings together two of my passions, which is technology as well as working with customers to drive outcomes that they're working towards. So yeah, that's been my journey so far. Chintan, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Vani and Tony. Similar to your experience, I've also taken a very unconventional route to this role. I also started my career as a software engineer at a storage company right after finishing my school. I was part of the team that was building a distributed storage virtualization software, which is very common today, but it was something unheard of back in those days. So what we were building became very complex because it was way ahead of its time. And when we were doing some customer trials, the field team invited me to join them to help them with those trials. Now, this is the first time I saw how customers use the software that I was building as an engineer. And that was a very intriguing experience. And after that, I spent a lot of time with the field team, learning about the sales process, role of a sales engineer. And at that point, I decided that, hey, this is what I want to do going forward. So after that, I landed a job as a solution engineer at a data security startup called Wometric. Now, this was a smaller company, so this was a very sort of a hybrid role where we would not only sell the software, but also afterwards help customers implement it and also train them to manage it. So this is sort of a very first unique experience where I got to see the end-to-end customer journey, right? From selling to implementing and then managing it over the time. As this company grew, right, they decided to have a separate professional services team, and this is where they offered me a role, right, to lead this team. So I took up the role, and then as part of the role, I learned to build various professional services offering, a framework that will follow when we work with the customers, and more importantly, how to manage the P&L for the organization. Now, I always wanted to go back to an SC role, right? That was at the back of the mind. So this opportunity came when the company decided to have another go-to-market team that will focus on cloud and managed service providers. So I joined that team as the first SC, and as the team grew, I grew in my role, and then we had a global team of around 10 SCs, and I was promoted to run that team. So this plethora of experience, right, helped me quite a bit to learn about the various aspects of the customer journey, and helped me tremendously when I landed my role as a solution engineer here at HashiCorp.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that was so interesting. You guys have done already so much in your careers, and it's really interesting just to hear how change is inevitable, right? And ultimately, you've all followed your interests, right? And it sounds like a natural transition from one role to the next. And that sort of brings us into a question from the audience. There was an anonymous question that is basically, wondering how relevant or how important that prior experience is for then going up the ranks as an SC, moving into a senior or a staff level. And I know, Tony, you have that lived experience. So, can you speak to that and how important your past roles were?
Yeah, it's a really important question, I think, for a lot of members of our team and for those in the community that are thinking about career progression. Where does it take them? There's certainly the journey element where what does exit velocity look like? What does the next step look like? But even within a single type of role, like staying within the SE family, I think it's important to rationalize how each of those levels are structured for a given organization. So I will caveat this is a very HashiCorp frame of mind, but I liken it most often to actually, Vani, something you mentioned earlier, learning a new language. If our job is effectively to be translation as a service between a customer's needs, the businesses, and driving a technical solution, the experience we gain from prior roles and the experience we gain in each experience we have with the customer starts to refine that process. It goes from maybe a very simple input-output flow of being able to take a problem and create a very pointed solution following a playbook to then elevating it and starting to create more context, doing more discovery, understanding how do I ask a question behind a question, to borrow a phrase from one of my mentors. And I think that's the type of opportunity that we exercise as SEs are elevating themselves in the role that they're in today. So as you're going from associate to SE, whatever the rank is called, regular SE, to senior, to staff, to senior staff and principal, and wherever that might take you, I think the question that I asked myself was, how do I elevate the work that I'm doing, get crisp in that translation? And it often comes from looking to mentors that may not always be SEs. Some of my best coaches and mentors were from sales, they were from product, they were from other aspects of all of the connection points that a role naturally interfaces with, to be able to say, how do I more effectively translate what you need, what my customer needs, and what I'm doing to accelerate that time toward completion. And so a successful outcome isn't purely measured off of how quickly can I derive a solution, but how effectively or how optimized is that solution for where I need to take a customer through their full life cycle. So obviously, there, depending on the company, there might be other aspects to look at as well, contributions to the broader organization, webinars like this, assets that we're creating. There are a lot of different expressions based off of what people feel comfortable, what comfort looks like for them, but also where they want to see themselves going longer term. So I think that's the type of reflection, introspection that helps. But it goes back to a key point that I think about at least. How do I more attune or accurately provide a translation as a service function for myself, my customer, and my business?
Yeah, that's a great response. Yeah, and I think really the message there is empathy, right? You're learning how to empathize with the customer due to all this experience, right? And it's all connected, everything's connected. And so it ultimately helps with the roles. And yeah, that's great. Anybody else, any of the panelists want to add anything to that response of that question?
Yeah, but one thing, Carlos, I would also add is to Tony's point, right? I mean, one of the biggest, sort of area for me is, listening better. The better you listen the customer's requirements, customer's question, the better you will be able to translate into, what kind of solution we can offer, what kind of value we can add. And as you sort of work as an SE, you get better over the time, right? Based on your past experience. Also coupled with, working with many different other teams, whether it's a product management, whether it's a field CTO, you also get better at engaging many different resources that you have at your disposal. Those also play a very critical role, right? As you move from a solution engineer to a senior engineer or staff engineer.
Yeah, just general, yeah, soft skills, right? Learning how to take in what you're hearing and then use it in the best way possible to give value to the customer, the person you're talking to. Yeah, that's great, Jen. So now moving into a more zoomed in, right, view of your experience and of your past roles, and really focusing on that transition into solutions engineering. And just want to ask the panel again, what advice do you have for that transition for someone looking to get into solutions engineering? What are some of the things that they should focus on and really be mindful of when attempting that?
So when you think about the solutions engineering role, it's a combination of technical expertise and business acumen. So it's important for you to understand where do you fall in the quadrant, right? You can actually carve a niche for yourself based upon, hey, I'm deeply technical, or I have very good business acumen. Know your strengths, work towards that. But if you're low on technical expertise or business acumen, skill up, right? It's something that you can easily work on. Another thing is, something that I look for in every candidate is learnability. No two jobs of mine have ever needed the same technology, right? So you're constantly learning. We have product updates, which is monthly. Our industry is constantly evolving. So learning is par for the course. I recently hired someone who had traditionally always sold hardware, but he gave such a brilliant presentation. And then he's thriving at HashiCorp, which means that it's all about your learnability. And something top of mind for all of us is the HashiCorp principles, right? I always look for kindness and empathy. I mean, of course, all the principles, but more so that. There's a favorite quote that I always talk about. In this world where you can be anything, be kind. I think if you lead with kindness and empathy in all your conversations, all your discussions, good things follow, right? And embrace being uncomfortable. Our job comes with so many unknowns. So embrace being uncomfortable, the ambiguity. How often do you walk into a situation where you know what your customer needs exactly? What are the product integrations? So be uncomfortable, but enjoy the ride.
Yeah, beautifully said. Anybody else want to add onto that?
Yeah,
I can
Carlos,
certainly echo. Oh, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
I'll certainly echo what Bonnie mentioned. There's so much intricacy, change always within the technology space, especially so for an SE. And every customer is going to be different. So the one set of domain expertise doesn't necessarily translate as an organization grows or as our customer base changes. But I also look for attitude and aptitude. So are we capable of learning? Are we thinking about this with a growth mindset? And how are you engaging with not just your customers, but your teams? Because ultimately what we rationalize is the work is hard. There's a lot to learn, but the way we approach it changes the way we create excitement, drive culture, and ultimately shape an organization and the people around us to be motivated, but also compassionate and convicted, and all of this other stuff that I think isn't necessarily deep technical acumen, but does shape the day-to-day experience, which carries a huge impact for us as leaders, but also as team members. I'm pleasantly pleased to say that it's something that we talked about and reflect on even when we were a much smaller company. As we grow, the principles that Bonnie mentioned are something that I am proud that we've held dear. And so it's one of the aspects that I often go back to and say, we will keep growing, but there are certain first principles that stick with us. And for me, especially during interviewing, it's not how great do you know Volt? Do you know all of the intricacies of Terraform? We could train that. But having the right attitude and aptitude and the capacity to ask yourself, how do I learn, especially in the context of an ever-evolving technology landscape, starts to shed a light on the skills that are critical for success in not just the SE role, but for any technologist.
Yeah. So really those meta skills, right? And yeah, enthusiasm can take you far, right? That's great. Chintan, did you have anything else that you wanted to say just regarding?
Yeah, I agree with both of them, right? Like the change is constant, right? In this industry in general, right? To having that, goal of a lifelong learning is going to take you far. Apart from what they've said, one thing I would mention, and something that has been tremendously helpful for me, especially from transitioning from other roles into the solution engineering role, is to find a mentor or two, right? Either at your work or within your network. They will not only help you understand this role better, but they will also provide you constructive feedback on the areas you need to work hard to be successful in this role. Personally, for me, I wouldn't be where I am without the help and support of this mentors.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Mentors and leaning on their experience, leaning on, their advice can be huge. Great. So now focusing a bit more on the future and some career growth opportunities that you've experienced at HashiCorp. Could you speak to that? What has that been like? What are some of those opportunities within HashiCorp? And we can start with Tony and go down the line if that's easiest.
Yeah, and just to make sure I answer the 2 points. So there's opportunities within HashiCorp, and what else would you like me to cover, Carlos?
Yeah, I think what are some career growth opportunities within HashiCorp and just maybe some of your experience within that, since it does sound like you've had some of those opportunities within your own career.
Yeah, and I think it's, we're here to talk about SEs, but one of the things Chintan certainly knows we reflect on the team is there are a lot of different parts of an organization that an SE contributes to. And so we have had team members successfully transition into roles that may not look like an SE, but are certainly part of our extended franchise. And so it's something that I go back to think about. When I first came to HashiCorp, I was actually given the option, do you want to become a technical account manager, a customer success manager, or an SE? I personally gravitated toward the SE role, but we work with a lot of these functions today, even if they might have different names in different organizations. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not building ourselves. And so it's a constant reminder. We may not always carry the title of SE, but how does that function relate to areas of interest that you're looking for? Is it perhaps a field CTO role that you're thinking about because you love the public stage or maybe enjoy engaging with customers? But the expectations of a field CTO will be generally different than maybe someone who's more interested in transitioning over to maybe technical leadership like Vani and I have, or SE leadership, or even to other functions like product marketing, technical field marketing. And ultimately, it comes down to where does an individual see themselves in the future? So it was a little bit of advice I got from a mentor of mine, going back to Chintan's comment earlier, about thinking not just for this role and the next, but really what is that? What are the set of roles that really help you round yourself out as a leader, or maybe not necessarily a people leader, but a technical leader? And so I think there are two paths that I simplify this though to. There are some people that will naturally gravitate toward people leadership. As much as I tried to do different things in life, it seems to always come back to me. It's something that I'm passionate about. But there are others for whom technical leadership without people leadership is an extremely strong career track as well. And so that might be a direction towards something like field CTO, something like a principal SE role, where you can effectively own a go-to-market function. You can start to create not just niche plays, but things that ultimately drive impact for an entire organization. There is huge capacity for anyone who's thinking about their future interests, and leadership takes all forms. So I think the beauty of an organization like what we got to experience, at least during my time here so far, has been that it's always an open conversation with your manager, making sure that there's some give and take. And as Chintan mentioned, looking for mentors who will challenge you, who will suggest maybe alternative paths that you didn't originally consider. The prospects for an SE were not something, frankly, I'll be vulnerable for a moment, that I considered before coming into the SE role. I thought to myself, how do I become really good at doing this? And then imagine worlds beyond. It was a great opportunity to think about all of these other functions within an organization that are exciting personally. And we lean into the areas that we naturally have some skill set or domain expertise in, but we should not really avoid challenging ourselves every so often. Say, is there a moment for us to think about where we surpass our own preconceived limits? And that should be an active conversation with your manager, should be an active form of outreach within your network, trying to get exposure to what those functions may entail and what those roles could lead to. I think there's a lot of surprises around every door, but the good news is that we often have a warm community to engage in some of those conversations with. So going back to something I said at the beginning, relationships matter. And it's not just for the sake of career progression, but for understanding what opportunities could be lying ahead that we didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you simplified, the paths ahead to people or technical, right? And then within that, trying to grow, right? And trying to surpass your comfort zone and being very mindful of that and using your network to do that. That's great. Vani, did you want to go ahead and speak to your own experience and some of the career opportunities that you found for SEs?
For sure. Especially at HashiCorp, I feel like we have a lot more opportunities. So of course, you grow within the role, as Tony mentioned, you take the leadership, field CTO. But there are a couple of other ones I think we would be remiss to mention. One is the solution architects. They do provide deeper technical expertise for more complicated, involved problems. So if you want to be more technical, which is one of your paths, then that is a great place to be, solution architecture. And it also takes you away from the account management, which may not be always everyone's cup of tea, right? Another thing is within our services organization, a role that has taken off very well is the resident solution architect. They work with our customers and work with the key stakeholders at the customers to provide guidance and bring top-down work top-down to make sure that the HashiCorp products are established and used across the company. So you get to work with one customer for an extended period of time and provide your guidance. So I think those are a couple of other roles that come to mind that I think SEs looking to do something a little different would enjoy at HashiCorp.
Yeah, that's great. Chintan, do you want to go ahead as well?
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I think Tony and Wani has spoken about a lot of different opportunities. One thing I would also add to that is, we had an SC in our team, who decided to also, join the product management team, and now he's a product owner, right, for the Sentinel solution we have. So, I mean, this role opens up a lots of customer facing and technical opportunity within the organization, and we have tons of those options, right, depending on your interest and career aspirations.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's so many paths ahead, like you guys have laid out. And for me, being so early in my career, this is incredibly informative. And yeah, this has been great. I've been loving this. Cool. So now to just jump into maybe some more specific questions, taking some from the audience as well. Um, People are wondering, what's the hardest challenge that you found, the biggest learning curve from transitioning to become an SE? And you could just speak to your own experience and what you found to be the most challenging.
Yeah, I could jump in here. And I think looking at some of the other questions, there's also one in here about podcasts. So I'll try to touch on both here. But jumping in from a non-sales background, because Vani and Chintan, certainly we all come from different walks of life, different technology experiences. But for me, it was understanding what does it mean to sell? And we're all constantly selling in some capacity, but refining that skill was incredibly important early on for my career as I transitioned from a very, very technical role, technical leadership in some capacities, but just not from a vendor. There's a lot to learn from sales methodologies to process to also really refining how do we understand that we're not working on science projects, because it's way too easy to excite a technologist like myself, and working on understanding those partnerships that are involved in creating scale and sustainability. So while I can answer a lot of questions back then, certainly fewer now, I rely on Chintan, but I think there's an opportunity for us to understand how do you partner with sales? How do you leverage sort of a network that creates not just context for a technology solution, but a business problem that we are also looking to address? So I mentioned I was going to touch on that second question as well. I found a lot of podcasts, great options out there just on Spotify, Google, I guess Google Podcasts is gone now, but other options. 30 Minutes Spreadings Club was a personal favorite because there's very, again, clear actions, very compressed, great for a quick drive. But if you're looking for something a little bit more extended or some other options, there's, I think it's called Force Builders, but it's from John McNeely, I believe. That's a newer one for me. And so I'm constantly looking for different ways to make the plane rides go a little bit faster. But I think podcasts have been a convenient way to learn about the other side of the house and really leverage some of those techniques in how we engage with customers, so that we're not just answering a technical problem statement, but also understanding the business context.
Yeah, that's great. I always love hearing some podcast recommendations. Do you have any books, just to stay on the topic a little bit longer? Any books that you found influential to becoming an SE or, succeeding?
Let's see. Now, Chintan, you'll have to get the name right for me. But there was one, Mastering Technical Sales. There we go. It popped up. It was the very first book I read as I entered the SE world. There was a time when we were joking, like you would have sort of the post-it notes or the Kindle bookmarks, and I would go back and pull it up, and it was, again, Framing from a Mentor. But that one, and there's frankly and candidly, I tend to eject from reading about the SE life since we live it every day. And so I'm curious, Chintan or Vani, if you've got any SE specific books that you picked up in your careers.
So for those of you who are listening, I want to share that at HashiCorp, we do have an aspiring leaders program. So something that everyone should know about. And in that, we have started reading the Technical Sales Wasabi, right? No, Tech Sales Wasabi, to make sure I got the name right. What it talks about is how a solutions engineer is very rare and difficult to grow, like the wasabi plant, right? You expect the role to be so involved, and it is such a It's a culmination of a lot of hard sweat and toil. So for those of you who are thinking about transitioning into that role or learning more about it, definitely check out the Tech Sales Wasabi. I feel like it gave me a greater appreciation for something that I took for granted, right? So yeah. And
Yeah,
another, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just gonna say that's a great analogy. I've never heard it compared to wasabi. But yeah, wasabi is super expensive, right? And it's really difficult to grow.
Difficult to
So yeah,
grow. There
right.
you go. Yeah.
I
And
love
another
that.
book that I'm rereading is the Atomic Habits to kind of improve my own habits again. So yes, something that comes to mind would be those two books.
Nice. Yeah, and Chintan, do you have any books, podcasts, any sort of media that you enjoy consuming?
Yeah, so apart from, I mean, what Vani and Tony has mentioned, like one thing I would also call out is there's a book I had read, To Sell is Human. I think that was very eye-opening for me. Sales is a lot about processes, but there is a human connection to it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with other humans, right? And it's important to build trust with them. So you can be a trusted advisor to them. So that book had a quite a big of impact, right? And opened up a lot of different areas that I never thought of, right? Working as a sales engineer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's sort of what I've been learning as well. The books I've been reading is just more about the sales side and really trying to understand that because, it's a very unique role, having to balance both technical and also people skills. But yeah, I've been loving hearing you guys' recommendations. But going back to that original question with, the learning curve and what's been, the most challenging for you, I know we heard Tony's answer. Vani, do you want to go ahead and give your rendition?
Sure. I think the biggest, I just love talking to people, which I still do. And I love technology. I thought that's it. So I can be a solutions engineer. When you're working with them, those are the things that you see. But as Tony mentioned, I was overwhelmed by oh, there's a sales cycle. So you just can't dabble in technology and have fun with it, talk to people. No, there is more to it. It's a very directed work where you are not just building projects. There is an outcome. So you are very outcome driven. Yes, you want to make your customer successful. You want to make sure that the solution we are building for them actually um, is the right solution for them, but it has a directed outcome. I've encountered many people who love technology so much that for them, sales can be a bad word, but remember that's what pays the bills. So accepting that there is a sales cycle and products need to be sold, subscriptions need to be sold and consumed is just the ground reality of sales engineering or solutions engineering.
Yeah, great. And Chintan, what is your rendition of your biggest learning curve?
Yeah, so for me, I came from a very technical background as an engineer. So, especially as I mentioned, right, the first time I had to work with the customer through the field team, my understanding is this job is very easy. All you have to do is, prepare a PowerPoint deck, walk the customer through that, and then they're gonna say, I love it, I'm gonna buy it. But when I participated in the trials, right, a very first sales cycle, I came to realize that is not what it is, right? That there is a lot to this. So for me, especially as a technical person, right, who started the career, um, learning these things, took a long time. Um, you know, I I spent a lot of cycles on just learning the business aspect of things, right? Like, why do customers buy a product, right? I mean, I always believe you build the coolest product, it's going to sell on its own, right? That is not very true. So why customers buy a product? How do companies find them as leads? What is the sales process? Also, as Wani and another mentioned, the customer success part of it. It's not just once you sell, it's done. Um, even a little bit of accounting, right? Because, when you're working with customer and typically your rep drives a lot of those activities in terms of pricing and negotiation, you also need to know a little bit about that. So for me, learning about the business aspect of things and applying those in my role, what was a big learning curve, right? Especially when I was making a transition. So any folks who are planning to make that kind of transition, I would say focus a lot on those aspects and make sure you learn those, because they would be tremendously helpful, right? As you start working with the rep or start, driving into this role.
Yeah, this is all really great advice. So yeah, for me, I'm super happy that I'm here and listening to this, and I hope the audience is as well. So we're running up on time. There's one last question that I'm going to ask the panel, and it's specific to your experience within HashiCorp, right? This was also something that an attendee put in the Q&A. What would you say differs the SE role at HashiCorp from other companies? Why be an SE at HashiCorp? We can start with Tony and go with Vani and Chintan to finish the session.
Yeah, this is a fascinating one for me, because it's what personally keeps me energized about being here after 5 years. Our product opportunity is massive. There's so much that keeps me excited day to day about the context shifting, which can times feel a little challenging, right? You're going from cybersecurity to infrastructure to networking to even transcending that to higher level constructs. But that's personally exciting. That's motivating to know that from a problem space perspective, a total addressable market, we are just scraping the surface of what we recognize our products do, and we'll keep investing and innovating. So from a technology perspective, super, super exciting. From a people perspective, I've prided myself on working with some of the smartest people in every career I have worked, and that is no different here. We have brilliant technologists, brilliant SEs. And the last piece for me is, I think, the alignment of revenue. So the SE role itself can be a little different in a lot of organizations. It could be scoped to a more tighter portion of the sales cycle. I think there's a great opportunity at HashiCorp for an SE to speak up, raise their hand, and look for opportunities to say, here's how we're creating pipe. Here's how we're creating new motion at the company. There's been very rarely cases where we'll say that's a bad idea. Instead, we want to inspire creativity. And I think that goes from the end-to-end sales cycle all the way to thinking about how do we innovate at the product lines themselves, as Chintan alluded to earlier. So endless opportunity, and frankly, just truly endless potential for where our product lines will go, and the opportunity to exercise that potential as an SE.
I love it. Yeah, great response. Gets me excited to work here. All right, Vani, your turn.
So of course, I'd already heard about the products. I had used it in my last project just before coming here. But what really brought me here was the culture. I did a lot of research. I read a lot about it. And I heard and understood even during my interview process that the principles are not just about something they talk about, they take it seriously. In many other companies, you might come across a few people you would rather not work with on a regular basis. At HashiCorp, I can count on one hand the number of people I can hardly think of anyone like that, right? So the culture has been top of mind, and that's what still keeps me here. Of course, our potential is tremendous, but early in my career, I dealt with negative culture, and I know that really matters, right? So people, product, culture couldn't ask for a better company. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Just to reiterate my experience, everybody has been incredibly approachable. Being an intern, you could hit anybody up on Slack. Hey, do you have time for a one-on-one, 30 minutes? Anybody would say yes, happy to help, happy to give advice. So yeah, the culture is great. And now Chintan, finish us off, please. What's your rendition of this question?
No. So I think as Tony called out, right, this is a very unique company. I've worked with a lot of large companies, right? And they have solutions that work in a specific segment, right? So you may have a company that is in the security market and they have 20 products. Here it's very unique because the different solutions they have, they touch the infrastructure, security, networking, developer experience. So there's a lot to learn here, right? On every day, which is what keeps me going. Now, many times it can be daunting, right? That there's so much stuff. And the reason that also keeps me here and gets going is that Vani call out is the people aspect. There is a tremendous support ecosystem that you get here, not just from the fellow SEs who are super nice to work with, but I've also worked with the product management team. I've also worked with the product marketing team. I work with the field CTO team who have provided me all the help and support I need to be successful in my role. That has been a truly differentiator, right, compared to the many other companies I worked in the past.
Yeah, very well said. And, I want to thank everybody for sticking through us. I think this has been incredibly informative. We covered lots of different topics related to SE and, some potential paths ahead, even moving into different areas of technology. So I just wanted to thank everybody again for taking time out of your day and for joining us. Also want to thank the panelists and for everybody on the HashiCorp side that helped facilitate and enable this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.